They were burying him alive, not as punishment, as law. On Blackthorn Ridge, where winter kills the weak and the strong devour everything else, Alpha Ronan Varric stood over a shallow grave and declared the blind wolf pup unfit. The pack circled in silence. No one objected. No one dared. Except her. Alara Voss, outcast, forgotten, barely worth a name, stepped forward with trembling hands and begged for a life no one else valued. They laughed. The dirt fell. The grave sealed shut. But that night, while the pack celebrated strength, she made a choice that would burn their world to ash. Stay until the end. Drop a like. Tell us where you're watching from. The wind on Blackthorn Ridge didn't howl. It cut. It sliced through fur, through flesh, through any illusion that mercy had a place here. The cliffs rose black and jagged against a sky the color of old iron, and below them, the pack territory sprawled like scars across frozen ground. This was not a place for the gentle. Ronan Varric stood at the edge of the burial ground, shoulders broad enough to block the wind, eyes hard as the stone beneath his boots. His coat was dark gray streaked with silver, earned scars, earned rank. Alpha, uncontested, unchallenged for 7 winters. Behind him, the pack gathered in a crescent. 80 wolves, maybe more. Warriors with torn ears and scarred muzzles. Hunters with blood still fresh on their claws. Mothers who'd lost pups to cold, to hunger, to the ridge itself and learned not to weep. No one wept here. At Ronan's feet lay a bundle of fur no bigger than a rabbit. The pup didn't move, didn't cry. Its eyes were sealed shut, clouded white beneath the lids, blind. Unfit, Ronan said. The word fell like a stone into water, final, irreversible. Beside him the healer, a grizzled wolf named Thorn with one milky eye and hands that had delivered half the pack, nodded slowly. Born 3 days ago, eyes didn't open, won't open. Even if they did, he shook his head. He'd see nothing. Then it's decided. Wait. The voice came from the back, quiet, shaking. The pack shifted, heads turning, lips curling in confusion. Someone actually spoke against the Alpha? Alara Voss stepped forward. She was small, thin. Her coat was a dull brown, patchy in places where old wounds hadn't healed right. She walked with a limp, legacy of a fall 2 winters back that never set properly. Low-ranked, barely tolerated. The kind of wolf who ate last, slept on the edges, and spoke only when spoken to. She wasn't supposed to speak now. Ronan's gaze locked onto her, cold, measuring. You have something to say, Voss? Alara's throat worked. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to lower her eyes, back away, disappear into the crowd. But she looked at the pup, and she couldn't. He's alive, she said. He's blind. He's breathing. His heart beats. He's a burden. Ronan's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. A drain on resources we don't have. Winter's coming harder than last year. We lost 3 hunters to the avalanche. Food's already short. You want to waste milk on a wolf who'll never hunt, never fight, never contribute? He's 3 days old, Alara said, and hated how her voice cracked. You don't know what he'll be. A ripple of laughter moved through the pack. Not cruel exactly, just dismissive. The way you laugh at a pup who barks at thunder. A voice called out from the crowd. She's got a point, though. 3 days is nothing. Another voice, harsher. 3 days or 3 months. Blind is blind. My cousin was born with a twisted paw, someone else offered. Healer said he'd never walk right. He's one of our best trackers now. That's different, Thorn cut in, his voice rough with authority. A twisted paw can strengthen. Blindness doesn't heal. Ronan stepped closer to Alara. He towered over her. His shadow swallowed her whole. I know the law, he said quietly. Weakness is death. Strength is survival. This ridge doesn't forgive mistakes, and I don't waste resources on hope. Then let me take him. Silence dropped like a guillotine. Ronan stared at her. What? Let me raise him. My rations. My responsibility. If he dies, he dies. But if he lives, he won't. You don't know that. Ronan's jaw tightened. For a moment, just a flicker, something almost like pity crossed his face. Then it hardened again. No, he said. The law is clear. Unfit pups are returned to the earth. That's how we survive. That's how we stay strong. Alara's hands clenched. And who decides what's strong? The question hung in the air like smoke. Ronan's eyes narrowed. I do. Then you're wrong. The pack sucked in a collective breath. No one called the Alpha wrong. Not here. Not on Blackthorn Ridge, where challenge meant blood and blood meant death. From somewhere in the crowd, a low growl rumbled. Someone muttered, "She's lost her mind." Another voice, "Always knew she was soft." But a few stayed silent, watching, waiting. Ronan leaned down until his muzzle was inches from hers. His voice dropped to a whisper only she could hear. "You're already at the bottom, Voss. You want to go lower? You want to find out what happens when I stop tolerating you?" Alara's legs shook. Her vision blurred. Every fiber of her body screamed to submit, to grovel, to beg forgiveness. But she looked past him, at the tiny pup lying motionless on the frozen ground, and she whispered back, "Do what you want to me. Just let him live." Ronan straightened. His expression was unreadable. Then he turned to the pack. "The law stands," he said. "Bury him." Two wolves stepped forward, Dax and Kira, mid-ranked enforcers who carried out orders without question. Dax was massive, built like a boulder, with a scar running from his left eye to his jaw. Kira was leaner, faster, with sharp amber eyes that missed nothing. Dax scooped up the pup with one massive paw. The little body dangled limp, barely a weight at all. Alara moved without thinking. She lunged forward, reaching for the pup, and Kira's arm shot out, catching her across the chest, slamming her back into the dirt. "Don't," Kira said. Not unkindly. Just firm. "You'll only make it worse." Alara scrambled to her feet, breath ragged. "Please." But Dax was already walking toward the grave, a shallow pit, pre-dug in the frozen earth. The ground here was too hard for deep burials. 6 inches, maybe 8. Enough. He placed the pup inside. Gently, almost, like he was tucking in a child. Then he picked up the shovel. "No!" Alara's voice cracked. She tried to move forward again, and this time 3 wolves blocked her path. Not attacking, just holding, restraining. "Let it go," one of them muttered, a younger wolf named Garen, who'd always been decent to her. "It's kinder this way." "Kinder?" Alara's voice rose, breaking. "You're burying him alive." "He won't feel it long," Garen said softly. "It'll be over quick." The first shovelful of dirt hit the pup's body with a sound like a whisper. Alara's knees buckled. The second shovelful fell. Then the third. The pup didn't move, didn't cry. Maybe it was already dead. Maybe it had been dead all along, and this was just ceremony. But Alara saw its tiny chest rise. Once. "He's breathing." No one listened. The dirt kept falling, covering the white fur. The sealed eyes, the fragile, impossible life that no one wanted. Dax worked methodically. Not rushed, not cruel, just efficient, like he was completing a task he'd done 100 times before. Because he had. This wasn't the first pup buried on Blackthorn Ridge. It wouldn't be the last. Alara stopped fighting. She sank to the ground, nails digging into frozen earth, and watched as they buried him alive. The mound grew. Snow began to dust it almost immediately, nature already working to erase the evidence. When it was done, Dax drove the shovel into the ground beside the grave and wiped his hands on his coat. "It's finished," he said to Ronan. The Alpha nodded. "Back to the dens. We've got work to do before the next storm hits." The pack didn't celebrate. They just dispersed. Duty done, law upheld. Back to the dens, the fires, the endless work of survival. Some cast glances at Alara as they passed. A few looked sympathetic. Most looked uncomfortable. A handful looked angry, like she'd wasted their time with her weakness. No one spoke to her. Ronan lingered for a moment. He looked down at the grave, a small mound of disturbed earth already dusted with fresh snow. Then he looked at Alara. She was still on her knees, staring at the grave, shaking. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, and he meant it. But he walked away anyway. The main den was carved deep into the mountain's heart. A series of interconnected chambers warmed by fire pits and geothermal vents. The largest chamber served as the pack's gathering hall, big enough to hold every wolf with room to spare. Tonight, it was packed. Someone had killed a deer earlier that morning. The carcass hung from hooks near the largest fire, being carved up by the pack's butchers. The smell of roasting meat filled the air, rich and heavy. Alara sat in the shadows near the entrance, as far from the fire as she could get, while still being technically inside. Her spot. The one she'd claimed years ago when it became clear she'd never be welcome closer to the warmth. A bone landed at her feet. She looked up. Kira stood there, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Eat," Kira said. Alara looked down at the bone. It was a rib, mostly stripped clean, barely any meat left, the scraps no one else wanted. Her usual portion. "Thanks," Alara said quietly. Kira hesitated. Then, "You know he was right, yeah? Ronan, about the pup." Alara said nothing. "I'm not trying to be cruel," Kira continued, "but this place, it doesn't work if we start making exceptions. You let one weak pup live, you set a precedent. Next thing you know, you've got half a dozen mouths you can't feed." "He wasn't weak," Alara said. "He was blind. That's not the same thing." "It is here." "Maybe it shouldn't be." Kira sighed. "Look, I get it. You've got a soft heart. That's fine. But you got to learn when to let go, for your own sake." She walked away before Alara could respond. Alara picked up the bone, stared at it. She wasn't hungry. She set it aside and leaned back against the cold stone wall, watching the pack eat and talk and laugh. Watching them live like nothing had happened. Because to them, nothing had happened. Just another day on the ridge, just another law upheld. Across the chamber, Ronan sat with his inner circle, his brother Darius, the headhunter Maven, and a few senior warriors. They were deep in conversation, probably planning the next hunt, discussing patrol routes, strategizing for winter. Darius looked up and caught Alara's eye. He smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. Darius Varric was everything his brother was, but sharper, colder. Where Ronan led with strength and conviction, Darius led with calculation and ambition. He'd never liked Alara, thought she was a waste of space, a drain on resources. He'd voted to exile her twice. Both times, Ronan had overruled him. Alara looked away. She waited until the fires burned low, until the conversations faded into snores, until even the sentries outside grew drowsy with cold and routine. Then she slipped out into the night. The burial ground was silent. Snow had already begun to cover the grave, smoothing it over, erasing the evidence. Alara knelt beside it. Her hands were bare. The cold bit into her skin immediately, turning fingers numb. She didn't care. She started digging. Her nails scraped frozen dirt. Her fingers bled. The earth resisted, hard-packed, icy, stubborn. She dug anyway, inch by inch, clawing through soil and stone. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Her hands screamed, blood mixed with dirt, turning the snow beneath her dark. She didn't stop, couldn't stop. Because somewhere under this frozen hell was a heartbeat, a life, a chance. Her fingers hit something soft, fur. A sob tore out of her throat. She dug faster, reckless now, desperate, until she'd cleared enough space to see him. The pup lay curled on his side, dirt caked in his fur. His mouth was slightly open, his eyes still sealed. He wasn't moving. Alara's heart stopped. She lifted him out with shaking hands, cradled him against her chest. He was so cold, so still. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She pressed her ear to his tiny chest. Silence. Then, a heartbeat. Faint, stuttering. But there. Alara's breath caught. She wrapped him in her own ragged coat, tucking him close to her body, trying to share what little warmth she had. "I've got you," she whispered. "I've got you. You're okay. The pup's mouth opened. A tiny, pitiful sound escaped, half wheeze, half cry. He was alive. Alara looked back toward the den, toward the pack, toward the law that said this pup had no right to exist. Then she looked down at the fragile life trembling in her arms, and she made a choice. The caverns beneath Blackthorn Ridge were forbidden. Old tunnels, carved by water and time, twisting deep into the mountain's bones. The pack avoided them. Too easy to get lost. Too many unstable passages. Too many things that lived in the dark. Stories said wolves had disappeared down there. Never found. Swallowed by the mountain itself. Alara had stopped believing in stories years ago. She'd spent countless hours exploring the edges of the cavern system, mapping the safe routes, finding places where no one else went, places where she could be alone, where the weight of the pack's judgment couldn't reach her. Now she carried the pup into the deepest chamber she knew, a small hollow about a 15-minute walk from the main den, accessible only through a series of narrow squeezes that would have been impossible for someone Dax's size. The chamber was roughly circular, maybe 10 feet across. A geothermal vent in the corner kept it warmer than the surface. Not comfortable, but survivable. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness, a constant rhythmic sound that had kept her company on lonely nights. She'd brought supplies here over the years, a pile of moss for bedding, a few dried strips of meat wrapped in leaves, a water skin she'd stolen from storage. She laid the pup on the moss bed. He was still shivering, still struggling to breathe. Dirt clogged his nose and mouth. Alara used the edge of her coat to clean his face, gently wiping away the soil, clearing his airways. The pup coughed, a weak, pitiful sound, but he kept breathing. She had no milk, no food suitable for a newborn, but she had her rations. The bone Kira had given her earlier, the scraps she'd saved from yesterday. A few strips of dried venison she'd been hoarding. She chewed the meat until it was soft enough for him to swallow. Fed him tiny pieces, one at a time, coaxing his mouth open, watching him struggle to eat. It took forever. By the end, he'd swallowed maybe 3 small bites, but he was breathing easier. His shivering slowed. Alara collapsed beside him, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. Her hands were still bleeding, her body ached, but the pup was alive. She needed to name him, couldn't keep calling him the pup in her head. She thought about it while she watched him sleep, thought about what he'd survived, what he was still surviving. Kael, she whispered. It meant storm in the old tongue, because that's what he was. A storm she'd pulled from the grave, a storm that would either destroy her or save her. She didn't know which yet. Whoa, the first week was hell. Alara moved between 2 worlds, the pack by day, the cavern by night. She woke before dawn, fed Kael whatever scraps she'd saved, made sure he was warm and hidden, then hiked back to the main den in time for morning duties. She worked harder than ever, hauling water from the frozen stream, mending torn gear, cleaning out the fire pits. Whatever low-ranked tasks were thrown her way. She ate less, slept less, pushed herself harder than she ever had, because every scrap of food she saved went to Kael. Every moment of rest was spent in the cavern, watching over him, making sure he was warm, making sure he was breathing. Kael was growing, slowly, painfully slowly, but growing. His coat thickened, his legs grew steadier, his breathing evened out, but his eyes still hadn't opened. She'd hoped, foolishly, she knew, that maybe Thorn had been wrong, that maybe Kael's eyes would open after a few days, clear and perfect. They didn't. The lid stayed sealed, and when she gently tried to open them, she saw only the milky white beneath. Blind, just like Thorn had said, but something else was happening. Kael's ears swiveled constantly, tracking sounds Alara couldn't hear. His nose twitched at scents she couldn't catch. When she moved around the cavern, his head followed her, not with sight, but with something else, awareness. He was learning the world through sound, through scent, through vibrations in the air, and he was learning fast. By the end of the first week, he could navigate the small cavern without bumping into walls. By the second week, he was playing, pouncing on shadows, wrestling with loose stones, growling his tiny, ridiculous growl. Alara watched him tumble across the moss, chasing echoes, and felt something crack open in her chest. Joy. She'd almost forgotten what that felt like. One night, she was sitting against the wall, exhausted, when Kael suddenly scrambled into her lap and curled up against her chest. He made a small, contented sound. Alara's throat tightened. She wrapped her arms around him and cried, for the first time in years, not from pain or fear or exhaustion, from something that felt dangerously close to hope. But the pack was noticing. You look like hell, Kira said one morning, watching Alara haul a water bucket up the hill. Alara forced a smile. Just tired. You're always tired lately. Kira's eyes narrowed. You eating enough? Yeah, fine. You sure? Because you're skin and bones, Voss. I've seen corpses with more meat on them. I'm fine. Kira didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. Others weren't so subtle. Where do you disappear to at night? Dax asked a few days later, cornering her near the storage den. Alara's heart jumped. Nowhere. Just can't sleep sometimes. I go for walks. In the dark? In this cold? Clears my head. Dax studied her for a long moment. Then he shrugged. Your funeral. But his eyes lingered. Alara knew she was running out of time. The pack was too observant, too tight-knit. Eventually someone would follow her. Someone would find the cavern. Someone would find Kael. She started varying her routes, entering the caverns from different angles, covering her tracks in the snow. It helped, but it wasn't enough. Because Ronan was watching too. She felt his eyes on her constantly, in the den, during work, at meals. He didn't say anything, but he was watching, and Ronan didn't miss much. He found her one evening near the edge of the territory, standing alone in the snow. She didn't hear him approach, didn't realize he was there until his shadow fell across her. You're killing yourself, he said. Alara turned. Ronan stood a few feet away, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I'm fine, she said automatically. No, you're not. He stepped closer. You've lost weight, you barely eat, you're exhausted, and you disappear every night like you're running from something. I'm not... Don't lie to me, Voss. Alara's jaw tightened. What do you want, Ronan? He was silent for a moment. Wind whipped snow around them, making the world feel small and closed in. Then, I want to know why you're doing this to yourself. Doing what? Wasting away. For what? For a pup that's already dead? Alara's breath caught. He's not... She stopped. Ronan's eyes sharpened. He's not what? Damn it. Alara looked away. Nothing. Ronan grabbed her arm, not hard, but firm. What did you do? Nothing. Alara, let go of me. He did. But he didn't step back. If you saved him, Ronan said quietly, if you dug him up, and you're hiding him somewhere. Why would I do that? Alara's voice was too sharp, too defensive. You saw him buried. You made sure of it. Ronan stared at her. She forced herself to hold his gaze, forced herself to keep breathing, forced herself not to crack under the weight of those cold, calculating eyes. Finally, Ronan stepped back. You're a terrible liar, he said. Then he turned and walked away. Alara stood frozen, heart hammering. He knew, or at least he suspected, which was almost worse. That night, she moved Kael deeper into the caverns, to a chamber she'd found years ago, hidden behind a narrow squeeze that only someone her size could fit through. You had to crawl on your belly for about 10 feet through a tunnel barely wider than your shoulders, then drop down into a smaller chamber. Safer, she hoped. Kael was nearly a month old now, still small, still blind, but stronger. His coat was thick and soft. His legs were steady. He could run, jump, play. He nuzzled against her when she fed him, making small, contented sounds. We have to be quiet now, she whispered. Okay? No more playing during the day. No more noise. Kael tilted his head, ears swiveling. He understood. Somehow, impossibly, he understood. Alara curled around him in the dark, listening to his heartbeat, feeling his warmth, and wondered how much longer she could keep him alive, how much longer she could keep herself alive, because she was fading. She knew it, felt it in the weakness of her limbs, the fog in her mind, the way her hands shook even when she wasn't cold. She was starving, giving everything to Kael, and it was killing her. But when she looked at him, blind, fragile, alive, she couldn't stop, wouldn't stop, even if it cost her everything. The storm hit on the first night of the new moon. Alara had been expecting it. You learn to read the signs on Blackthorn Ridge, the way the wind shifted, the thickness of the clouds, the nervous energy of the birds. This one was going to be bad. The pack huddled deep in the main cavern, fires stoked high, bodies pressed together for warmth. Sentries were pulled in from patrol. No one went outside during a storm like this. No one. Alara should have been with them. Instead, she was in the hidden chamber, wrapped around Kael, shivering so hard her teeth rattled. The cold was unbearable. The wind found every crack, every gap, turning the cavern into a frozen hell. Even the geothermal vent couldn't keep up. Kael whimpered, burrowing against her. "I know," she whispered. "I know. It's okay. We're okay." But they weren't. She was too weak, too cold. Her body was shutting down piece by piece. Her vision kept blurring. Her fingers had gone numb hours ago. She couldn't feel her toes. She wasn't going to make it through the night. And if she died here, Kael would die too. Alara closed her eyes, felt the darkness pressing in. And for the first time since she'd dug him up, she wondered if Ronan had been right. If mercy was just another word for cruelty. If she'd saved Kael only to doom them both. Maybe this was how it ended. 2 corpses in a forgotten cave. 2 failures. 2. Kael moved. He crawled out of her arms, stood on shaking legs, and howled. It wasn't loud, wasn't strong, but it echoed. Through the caverns, through the stone, through the storm. A sound that didn't belong to a month-old pup. A sound that felt like more. Alara's eyes snapped open. Kael stood in the center of the chamber, head raised, sightless eyes aimed at nothing and everything. And the storm paused, just for a heartbeat, just long enough for Alara to hear footsteps. Running, toward them. She tried to move, tried to hide Kael, tried to do anything, but her body wouldn't respond. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Someone was coming through the tunnels, fast and sure-footed, like they knew exactly where they were going. The narrow squeeze, someone was crawling through. Alara's heart hammered. She tried to push herself up, failed, fell back against the stone. And then Ronan Varric dropped into the chamber, snow-covered and furious. His eyes found Alara first, crumpled against the wall, barely conscious, lips blue with cold. Then they found Kael, standing in the center of the chamber, tiny, blind, alive. Ronan's expression went through a dozen emotions in the span of a heartbeat. Shock, anger, confusion, and something that looked almost like awe. "You..." He couldn't seem to finish the sentence. Kael turned his head toward Ronan, ears swiveling, tracking the sound of his breathing. The 2 wolves stared at each other. Alpha and pup. Power and vulnerability. Then Kael did something that made Ronan take a step back. He growled. Not a puppy growl. A real growl. Low and resonant and absolutely wrong for something that small. The chamber seemed to vibrate with it. Ronan's eyes widened. "What the hell?" Alara tried to speak, tried to explain, but her voice wouldn't work. The darkness was pulling her under. The last thing she saw before she passed out was Ronan moving toward her, shouting something she couldn't hear, and Kael still standing between them, still growling, still protecting her, even though he weighed maybe 5 pounds and couldn't see a damn thing. Then, everything went black. Alara woke to warmth, not the biting cold of the hidden chamber, not the frozen hell she'd been dying in, actual warmth. Her eyes cracked open, firelight danced across stone walls. She was lying on something soft, furs piled thick. A blanket covered her body. She tried to sit up, pain lanced through every muscle. Her hands were wrapped in cloth bandages, stained dark with dried blood. "Don't move," Ronan's voice, close. She turned her head. He sat a few feet away, arms crossed, face unreadable in the flickering light. They were in a small side chamber off the main den, private, away from the pack. Alara's breath caught. "Kael, he's fine." "Where?" "Safe." Ronan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You want to tell me what the hell you were thinking?" Alara pushed herself up despite the pain. The room spun. She gritted her teeth until it steadied. "I was thinking he deserved to live. You almost died." "But I didn't." "You would have." Ronan's voice was low, controlled, but something dangerous simmered beneath it. Another hour in that cold and you'd be gone. Do you understand that? Do you have any idea how close you came? Where is he? Alara asked again. Ronan stared at her. Then he stood and walked to the chamber entrance, pulling aside a hide curtain. In the corner of the room, nestled in a pile of moss and cloth, Kael slept. Alara's chest unclenched. He wouldn't leave you, Ronan said quietly. When I brought you back, he followed, stumbling blind through tunnels he'd never been in, falling, getting back up, following your scent. He paused. That's not normal. Alara dragged herself to the edge of the firs. Her legs barely held her weight. She made it 3 steps before her knees buckled. Ronan caught her before she hit the ground. Sit down before you kill yourself, he muttered, guiding her back to the bedding. You need to rest. He's fine. Alara sank back against the firs. Her hands shook. Everything shook. Ronan crouched beside her, studying her face. How long have you been starving yourself? I'm not. Don't lie to me. I can see your ribs through your coat. When's the last time you ate a full meal? Alara looked away. I eat. Scraps, bones, whatever's left after everyone else takes their share. His voice hardened. You've been feeding him with your own rations, haven't you? She said nothing. How long, Alara? Since I dug him up. Ronan's jaw tightened. He stood, paced to the other side of the chamber, turned back. You dug up a pup we buried according to pack law. You've been hiding him for weeks. You've been slowly killing yourself to keep him alive. And you didn't think to tell anyone? Who would I tell? You? Alara's voice cracked. You're the one who ordered him buried. Because he was blind. So what? She pushed herself up again, ignoring the way the room tilted. So what if he can't see? He's smart. He's strong. He learns faster than any pup I've ever seen. He navigates the caves better than wolves with working eyes. But you didn't give him a chance. Her voice broke. You just threw him away. Ronan was silent for a long moment. The fire crackled. Wind howled somewhere distant. The law exists for a reason, he said finally. We can't afford weakness. Every mouth we feed is a choice. Every wolf who can't contribute is a burden the rest of us carry. That's not cruelty. That's survival. And what happens when survival becomes an excuse to throw away anything that doesn't fit your definition of strength? Then we stay alive. At what cost? Ronan's eyes flashed. You want to know the cost? 3 winters ago, we let a sick wolf stay with the pack because his mother begged. Said he'd get better. He didn't. He died anyway. But not before the sickness spread. We lost 7 wolves. 7. Because we made an exception. Kyle's not sick. He's blind, Alara. He'll never hunt, never fight, never pull his weight. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Across the chamber, Kyle stirred. His head lifted, ears swiveling toward their voices. Then he stood, wobbled slightly, and walked directly toward Alara. Not stumbling, not bumping into walls. Walking. He climbed into her lap and curled up against her chest, making a soft rumbling sound. Ronan stared. He knows where I am, Alara said quietly. He always knows. Even when I'm silent. Even when I'm not moving. She stroked Kyle's head. You think that's weakness? Ronan didn't answer, but she saw something shift in his expression. Doubt, confusion, maybe even recognition. The pack can't know, he said finally. Alara's head snapped up. What? If they find out what you did, if they find out he's alive, there will be consequences for both of you. You're going to bury him again. No. Ronan ran a hand through his hair. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I need time to figure it out, which means you need to keep him hidden. I can't go back to the caves, not in this condition. You're not going anywhere. You're staying here until you're strong enough to stand without falling over. He pointed at Kyle. He stays too. But if anyone asks, he's a new pup from the last litter, undersized, nothing special. You're lying to the pack. I'm protecting you from your own stupidity. Alara wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she didn't need his protection, but she was too tired, and Kyle was warm in her arms, and for the first time in weeks, she felt something close to safe. Thank you, she whispered. Ronan grunted. Don't thank me yet. The next 3 days were a blur of sleep and food and pain. Ronan brought her meals, actual meals, not scraps. Roasted meat, fresh bread, broth thick with vegetables. Eat, he'd say, setting the bowl beside her. All of it. Ilara ate. Her body was so starved it hurt to eat. Her stomach cramped. Her head spun. But she forced it down because Kael needed her strong. Ronan brought food for Kael too. Minced meat, bone marrow, milk from the nursing mothers, though he refused to say how he'd gotten it. Kael ate like he'd been starving his whole life, which Ilara realized he had been. She'd been feeding him scraps, barely enough to survive, and he'd been growing anyway, burning through reserves he didn't have. Now, with proper food, he transformed. His coat grew thick and glossy, his legs strengthened, his body filled out. By the third day, he was twice the size he'd been. He's growing fast, Ronan observed, watching Kael wrestle with a piece of cloth. Too fast. Is that bad? I don't know. Ronan frowned. I've never seen a pup develop this quickly. Ilara reached out, and Kael immediately abandoned the cloth to climb into her lap. She ran her hands over his body, checking for injuries, for signs of illness. Nothing. He was perfect, except for the eyes that would never open. What happens when I'm better? She asked quietly. Ronan didn't answer right away. He stared into the fire, jaw working. I haven't decided, he said finally. The pack will find out eventually. I know. Darius already suspects something. He watches me. Watches you. Ronan's expression darkened at his brother's name. Darius watches everyone. It's what he does. He wants your position. He's wanted it for years. Ronan stood, paced to the entrance, looked out into the main den beyond. Doesn't mean he'll get it. But Ilara heard the uncertainty in his voice. On the fourth day, Ronan brought someone else. Thorn. The old healer limped into the chamber, one milky eye sweeping over Ilara, then landing on Kael. He stopped cold. That's not what you think, Ronan cut in. Thorn's good eye narrowed. That's the blind pup, the one we buried. Silence. Ronan's hand moved to the blade at his belt. Not threatening, just ready. Thorn looked between them, then he sighed. Put the knife away, boy. I'm not going to tell anyone. Why not? Because I'm old and I'm tired and I've buried too many pups in my life. Thorn knelt beside Kael, who immediately turned his head toward the healer. May I? Ilara nodded. Thorn's hands, scarred and gnarled from decades of work, moved over Kael's body with practiced efficiency, checking joints, listening to his heartbeat, examining his sealed eyes. Interesting, he muttered. What? Ilara asked. His eyes. They're not just blind, they're... Thorn peeled back one eyelid carefully. Beneath, the eye was completely white. No pupil, no iris, just milky nothingness. Sealed, like they never fully formed. Can you fix it? No. Thorn released the eyelid, but I don't think it matters. What do you mean? Thorn sat back on his heels. Watch. He moved to the other side of the chamber, slowly, silently. Kael's head tracked him perfectly. Thorn picked up a small stone, tossed it gently into the air. Kael's head followed the arc. He can't see, Thorn said, but he can perceive. Sound, movement, vibrations. He's compensating. The healer's expression was unreadable. I've never seen anything like it. Is he healthy? Ronan asked. Healthier than he should be, given what he's been through. Thorn looked at Ilara. You kept him alive in those caves for a month? Yes. On scraps? Yes. He should be dead. Thorn's voice was flat, clinical. The cold alone should have killed him. The malnutrition, the stress, any one of those things should have been enough. But he's not dead, Ilara said. No. Thorn stood, joints popping. He's very much alive, which raises the question, why? No one had an answer. Thorn moved toward the exit, then paused. Keep him hidden as long as you can. But know this, a pup this unusual won't stay secret forever, and when the pack finds out, he looked at Ronan, you'll have to make a choice. I know. Choose carefully, Alpha. The law is the only thing holding us together. Break it, and everything breaks. He left. Ronan stared at the empty doorway. He's right. About what? All of it. Bussin. That night, Ilara woke to voices. Angry voices. She sat up carefully. The chamber was dark. The fire had burned down to embers. Kael slept curled against her side. The voices came from the main den. She stood, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, and crept to the entrance. Beyond the hide curtain, the pack had gathered. Not everyone, but enough. And they were arguing. Can't keep ignoring this, someone was saying. Darius. Food stores are lower than they've ever been. We lost half the autumn hunt to the early freeze. Winter's barely started and we're already rationing. We'll manage, Ronan's voice. Calm, steady. We always do. Will we? Darius stepped forward. Firelight carved shadows across his face. Last winter we lost 3 wolves to starvation. The winter before, 5. How many will we lose this year? That's not... And meanwhile, you're hoarding resources. Darius gestured toward the side chamber, toward Ilara. Feeding a wolf who contributes nothing. Wasting food on... Careful! Ronan's voice dropped to a growl, but Darius didn't back down. She's dead weight, everyone knows it, and you're protecting her because, what, guilt? Sentiment? I'm protecting her because she's part of this pack. Barely. Darius looked around at the gathered wolves. How many of you agree? How many of you think we should be wasting resources on wolves who don't pull their weight? A few hands went up, not many, but enough. Ilara's stomach twisted. This isn't a vote, Ronan said. Maybe it should be. The chamber went dead silent. Challenge. That was challenge. Ronan stepped forward, and the wolves between them scattered. You want to challenge me, brother? Darius smiled. I want what's best for the pack. That's not an answer. Isn't it? They stared at each other. 2 alphas, 2 visions of leadership. Finally, Ronan spoke. You challenge me. You'd better be ready to bleed. I'm always ready. Then name the time. Darius opened his mouth, and Kael walked out of the side chamber. Every head turned. The blind pup walked directly into the center of the gathered wolves, head high, ears swiveling. Ilara's heart stopped. What the hell is that? Someone asked. Kael stopped in front of Ronan, sat, looked up at him with those sealed, sightless eyes, and growled. The same growl from the cave, low, resonant, wrong. The gathered wolves took a collective step back. That's not a normal pup, Maven whispered. The headhunter's voice was tight with something close to fear. Darius stared. Where did that come from? Ronan didn't answer. His eyes were locked on Kael. Ilara stepped out of the shadows. He's mine. Every eye turned to her. Yours? Darius's voice was sharp. Since when do you have a pup? Since I saved him. Understanding dawned on Darius's face. Then fury. The blind one, you dug him up. Gasps rippled through the crowd. You violated pack law, Darius continued, voice rising. I defied the Alpha's direct order. I saved a life, Ilara cut in. Her voice shook but held. Something this pack forgot how to do. The law exists for a reason. The law is wrong. Chaos erupted, wolves shouting, arguing, some defending Ilara, most condemning her. Darius's voice cut through it all. She admits it. She violated our most sacred law. The punishment is exile. Ronan, enforce it. All eyes turned to the Alpha. Ronan stood frozen, looking at Ilara, at Kael, at the pack tearing itself apart. Well, Darius pressed, are you going to uphold the law or not? Ronan's jaw worked. His hands clenched. Then he looked down at Kael. The pup stared back, sightless but somehow seeing, and Ronan made a choice. No, he said quietly. The den went silent. What? Darius breathed. I said no. Ronan's voice strengthened. She's not being exiled. She broke the law. I'm changing the law. Darius laughed, sharp, bitter. You can't just change the law because you feel like it. I'm Alpha. I can do whatever I want. Not anymore. Darius lunged. Ronan met him halfway. The 2 brothers collided in a crash of muscle and fury. Claws, teeth, blood. The pack scattered, giving them room. Alara grabbed Kyle, pulling him back toward the side chamber, but he twisted free, scrambling toward the fight. Kyle, no! The pup ran directly into the space between the fighting wolves and roared. Not a puppy sound, not a growl, a roar. It shook the walls, rattled stones, sent vibrations through the floor. Ronan and Darius froze mid-strike. Kale stood between them, tiny body rigid, sightless eyes blazing with something that looked almost like light. And then he collapsed. Alara was there in an instant, scooping him up. His body was burning hot, his breathing ragged. "What did you do?" she whispered. "What did you—" Kale's eyes, still sealed, began to glow. Faint, pulsing, like embers beneath snow. Ronan stumbled back. "What the hell?" The glow spread. Down Kyle's body, across his fur, tracing patterns that looked almost like runes. Ancient, powerful, impossible. Thorn's voice came from the back of the crowd. "The old blood." Everyone turned. The healer stepped forward, face pale. "The mark of the old blood. I've only seen it in records, in stories, but that's what this is." "What are you talking about?" Ronan demanded. "The first wolves. The ones who ruled before the ridge, before the packs, before the law." Thorn's voice shook. "They say the old blood grants power, strength beyond measure, vision beyond sight." "That's a myth." "Then explain that." Thorn pointed at Kyle. The glow was fading now, sinking back beneath the pup's fur. But the patterns remained, faint silver lines that traced across his body like a map to something ancient. Kyle's breathing steadied. His body cooled. He opened his eyes, still sealed, still blind. But behind the milky white, something moved, something that looked like starlight. Alara held him close, heart hammering. "You're okay, you're—" Kale licked her face. Then he turned his head toward the gathered pack, and every wolf there felt it. A presence, a weight, a certainty that this tiny blind pup was something far more than he appeared. Darius recovered first. "I don't care what he is. The law stands. She broke it. She pays." He moved toward Alara. Ronan blocked his path. "Touch her and I'll kill you," the Alpha said quietly. "You're choosing her over the pack?" "I'm choosing what's right." "There is no right. There's only survival." Ronan's eyes hardened. "Then maybe we've been surviving wrong." Darius's face twisted with rage. He looked around at the gathered wolves. "You see, your Alpha has gone soft, weak, protecting traitors, harboring abominations." He raised his voice. "Who stands with me?" A dozen wolves stepped forward. Not many, but enough. "This is your last chance, brother," Darius said. "Choose the law, or choose her." Ronan looked at Alara, at Kyle, at the fractured pack around him, then back at his brother. "I choose truth," he said, "and the truth is our law has been keeping us weak, not strong. We've been so afraid of burden that we've thrown away anything that doesn't fit our narrow definition of strength. How many pups have we buried who might have been extraordinary? How many wolves have we exiled who could have made us better? This is insanity. This is survival." Ronan stepped forward. Real survival, not just clinging to existence, actually thriving, growing, becoming something more than just predators fighting over scraps. "Pretty words won't feed us through winter. Neither will fear." The two brothers stared at each other. Then Darius turned to his followers. "We're leaving. Anyone who wants to survive the winter, real survival, not this fool's dream, comes with me." He walked toward the exit. His wolves followed. 12 of them, young, strong, warriors and hunters, a significant loss, but not fatal. The pack watched them go in silence. When the last one disappeared into the night, Ronan turned to the remaining wolves. "Anyone else want to leave?" he asked. No one moved. "Good." He looked at Alara. "Because we're going to need everyone we have for what comes next." Alara stepped forward, Kyle still cradled in her arms. "What comes next?" Ronan's expression was grim. "War. Darius won't let this go. He'll gather allies, other packs who think like him, and then he'll come back." "To take your position?" "To take everything." The gathered wolves shifted uneasily. How long do we have? Maven asked. Not long. Days. Maybe a week. Ronan looked down at Kyle. But we have something he doesn't. A blind pup? Someone scoffed. A weapon, Ronan corrected. Whatever that was, that power, it's real. And if we can figure out how to use it, he trailed off. Alara held Kale tighter. He's not a weapon. I know what he is. Ronan's voice softened. But he's also our only chance. Silence fell. Then Thorn spoke up from the back. There are records, in the old archives, stories about wolves like him. If I can find them, if I can understand what the marks mean, maybe we can help him control it. Do it, Ronan ordered. Maven, double the sentries. I want scouts on every approach. If Darius makes a move, I want to know about it before he's within a mile of this place. Yes, Alpha. The rest of you, get some sleep. Tomorrow we start preparing. The wolves dispersed slowly, casting uncertain glances at Kyle as they passed. Soon, only Ronan, Alara, and Kyle remained. I'm sorry, Alara said quietly. For what? Breaking the pack apart. Ronan shook his head. You didn't break anything. You just exposed the cracks that were already there. He moved to the fire, staring into the dying flames. Darius was right about one thing. We've been barely surviving for too long. Maybe it's time we tried something different. What if it doesn't work? Then we die trying. He looked back at her. Which is better than slowly withering away because we're too afraid to change. Kyle stirred in Alara's arms, making a small sound. She looked down at him, at the silver marks still faintly visible on his fur, at the sealed eyes that somehow saw more than any of them. And she realized something. She'd saved him because she couldn't bear to watch him die. But maybe, just maybe, he was going to save all of them, if they didn't destroy each other first. The thought haunted Alara through the long night that followed. She sat in the side chamber with Kyle curled against her chest, watching the silver marks on his fur pulse faintly with each breath. Outside, she could hear the pack moving, nervous, uncertain, preparing for a war none of them wanted. Ronan hadn't slept. She'd seen him pass by the entrance a dozen times, always moving, always checking, always planning. Kale stirred as dawn broke. His sealed eyes turned toward the entrance, ears swiveling. What is it? Alara whispered. The pup's body went rigid. Then the howl came, distant, from the eastern ridge, a challenge call that echoed across the frozen landscape. Darius. Ronan burst into the chamber seconds later. Get him to the deepest cave, now! What's happening? They're here. Sooner than I thought. Ronan's face was tight. Darius brought friends. Alara stood, legs still shaky but stronger than they'd been. How many? Too many. She followed him to the main den. Through the entrance she could see them, dark shapes against the snow, descending from the ridge like shadows. Not just Darius's dozen, 50 wolves, maybe more. Where did he find that many? Maven breathed, standing beside Ronan. Blackwater Pack, Ronan said grimly. An Ironstone, maybe others. He turned to the gathered defenders, barely 40 wolves, many of them old or injured. We can't win this fight. So what do we do? Kira asked. We talk. Maven's head snapped toward him. You can't be serious. I won't throw away lives on a battle we can't win. Ronan moved toward the entrance. I'll meet with him, hear what he wants. He wants you dead, Alara said quietly. Ronan looked at her. Probably, but maybe I can buy us time. He walked out before anyone could stop him. Alara watched him descend toward the burial ground where the enemy pack had gathered, alone, unarmed except for the knife at his belt. Kyle whimpered in her arms. I know, she whispered. I don't like it either. Ronan stopped 10 feet from Darius. His brother stood at the center of a formation of warriors, all bigger than him, all armed, all ready to tear him apart on command. Quite the army you've gathered, Ronan said. Darius smiled. They understand what you refuse to accept. The old ways are dying. The strong survive, the weak perish. There's no room for sentiment. Is that what you told them, or did you promise them our territory? Both. Darius took a step forward. Your experiment is over, brother. The pack is broken. Your wolves are weak. Your leadership is finished. We're not weak. No? Darius gestured at the den entrance, where Alara stood watching. "You're harboring a cripple and an abomination. You've lost a quarter of your fighting force, and you're standing here alone trying to reason with me." He laughed. "That's not strength. That's desperation." Ronan's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" "Step down, publicly. Acknowledge that your way failed. Give me the ridge. And if I don't? Then I take it anyway. But a lot more wolves die." Silence stretched between them. The wind howled. Snow began to fall. "You have until sundown," Darius said. "Decide." He turned and walked back to his army. Ronan stood alone in the snow for a long moment. Then he returned to the den. The pack waited in tense silence. "We're leaving," Ronan said. Chaos erupted. "We can't just abandon the ridge. This is our home. We'll die out there. We'll die here faster." Ronan's voice cut through the noise. "We're outnumbered 3-1. Half of you can barely fight. We don't have enough weapons, enough food, enough anything to hold this position." He looked around at the frightened faces. "But if we retreat to the northern caves, the ones Darius doesn't know about, we can survive. Regroup, plan. And then what?" someone called out. "Live in hiding forever?" "No, we come back stronger." "How?" Ronan's eyes found Alara, found Kael. Understanding rippled through the crowd. "You want to bet everything on a blind pup?" Maven asked incredulously. "I want to bet on the fact that we've been doing this wrong," Ronan said. "Darius thinks strength is teeth and claws and numbers. But that's not what kept our ancestors alive. They survived because they adapted, because they found new ways when the old ways failed. This is insane. So is standing here waiting to die." Ronan moved to the center of the den. "I'm giving you a choice. Stay and fight a battle we can't win, or come with me and find a way to win the war." Silence. Then Thorn stepped forward. "I'm with you." Kira followed. "Me too." One by one, wolves moved toward Ronan. Not all of them. A handful stayed back, uncertain, but most chose to follow. "We leave in an hour," Ronan said. "Pack light, food and weapons only. Everything else stays." The den erupted into controlled chaos, wolves gathering supplies, saying goodbye to dens they'd lived in for generations, preparing to abandon the only home they'd ever known. Alara stood frozen, Kael heavy in her arms. This was her fault. All of it. If she'd just let the pup die, if she'd followed the law, none of this would be happening. "Stop it!" She looked up. Ronan stood in front of her. "Stop what?" "Blaming yourself. I can see it all over your face." He reached out and touched Kael's head gently. This was going to happen eventually. Darius has been waiting for an excuse for years. You just accelerated things. That doesn't make it better. No. But it means we get to choose how this ends. He pulled back. "Can you walk? Really walk, not just stagger a few steps?" "I can manage." "Good. Because the northern caves are a 6-hour hike through rough terrain. If you can't keep up, I'll keep up." Ronan studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Get ready." They left as the sun reached its peak. 43 wolves moving in a tight column through deep snow, the young and old in the center. Warriors on the flanks, Ronan at the front, Maven at the rear. Alara walked near the middle, Kael strapped to her back in a makeshift sling Kira had fashioned from rope and hide. No one spoke. They couldn't afford the breath. The cold was vicious. Wind cut through fur and flesh, turning every step into a battle. Snow fell in thick curtains, obscuring the path ahead. Alara's legs screamed, her lungs burned. Her hands, still bandaged and half-healed, throbbed with every movement, but she kept walking. Behind them, smoke rose from Blackthorn Ridge. Darius was burning the dens. Kira saw it too. "Bastard," she muttered. "He's making sure we can't come back." "We'll build new dens," Ronan called back without turning. "Keep moving." They climbed higher. The terrain grew treacherous. Loose rocks hidden under snow, narrow ledges with deadly drops, slopes that threatened to avalanche with every step. A young wolf near the front slipped, tumbled. Ronan caught her before she went over the edge. "Watch your footing," he barked. "We don't have the numbers to lose anyone." They pressed on. Hours passed. The sun began its descent. The cold intensified. Alara's vision started to blur. Her legs buckled twice. Both times Kira caught her. Almost there, Kira lied. Just a little further. Alara knew it was a lie, but she appreciated it anyway. Kael had been silent the entire journey. Now he stirred, lifting his head, ears swiveling frantically. "What's wrong?" Alara whispered. The pup let out a low whine. Then the first arrow hit. It buried itself in the snow 3 feet from Ronan's head. "Down!" Maven roared. The column scattered, wolves diving for cover behind rocks, into drifts, anywhere that offered protection. More arrows rained down from the cliffs above. One caught a warrior in the shoulder, another grazed Thorn's leg. "Ambush!" someone screamed. Ronan was already moving, scanning the terrain. "Where are they?" An arrow answered, this one aimed directly at his chest. He dodged, but barely. Then they appeared. Wolves emerging from behind rocks and snowdrifts, 20 of them. Darius's hunters, weapons drawn, and leading them, Darius himself. "You really thought I'd let you run," he called down. "That I wouldn't know about your little escape route?" Ronan's face went cold. "How?" "You're not the only one who knows these mountains, brother." The hunters began to descend, surrounding the scattered pack, cutting off escape routes. Ronan drew his blade. "Defensive circle! Protect the young and injured!" But they were already trapped. Darius reached the bottom of the slope, blade in hand. "Last chance. Surrender. Acknowledge me as Alpha, and I'll let your wolves live." "And me?" "You're a traitor. You chose an abomination over your own pack. There's only one punishment for that." Ronan didn't lower his weapon. "Then you'll have to take it from me." Darius smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." He lunged. The two brothers collided in a fury of steel and blood. Ronan was bigger, stronger, but Darius was faster, more ruthless. Around them the battle erupted, hunters falling on the scattered pack, defenders fighting desperately to protect the vulnerable. Alara crouched behind a boulder with Kael, watching the carnage unfold, watching Ronan fight for his life, watching wolves she knew, wolves she'd lived beside for years, fall bleeding into the snow. This was her fault, all of it. "We have to do something," she whispered to Kael. The pup's body was vibrating, the silver marks on his fur glowing brighter, his sealed eyes beginning to burn with that strange inner light. "Can you help them?" Alara asked. "Like you did before?" Kael turned his head toward her, and somehow, impossibly, she understood. He could, but it would cost him. "I don't care," she said fiercely. "They're dying. We have to—" A shadow fell over her. She looked up. One of Darius's hunters stood there, blade raised. "Found the abomination," he called out. The blade came down. Alara threw herself over Kael, shielding him with her body. Felt the steel bite into her shoulder, felt blood, hot and immediate. Pain exploded through her. The hunter raised his weapon again, and Kael screamed. Not a puppy sound, not a roar. A sound that split the air like thunder, like rocks cracking, like the mountain itself breaking apart. The hunter flew backward, slammed into the cliff wall with bone-shattering force. He didn't get up. The battlefield went silent. Every wolf, friend and enemy alike, turned toward the source of that sound. Kael stood in front of Alara, tiny body rigid, silver marks blazing like fire. His sealed eyes opened, not the milky white everyone expected. Pure light, blinding, impossible, ancient. And in that light, Alara saw something that made her heart stop. Runes, covering his entire body, pulsing with power that felt older than the ridge, older than the packs, older than anything she could comprehend. Thorn's voice, shaking with awe. "The prophecy, it's real." "What prophecy?" Darius demanded, still locked in combat with Ronan. "The first wolves," Thorn said, stumbling forward. "The legends say they were more than animals. They were guardians. Protectors chosen by the mountain itself." He pointed at Kael. "And when the packs lost their way, when strength became cruelty, the mountain would send a sign." "That's a myth." "Does he look like a myth?" Thorn's voice rose. "The marks, the power, the blindness that sees more than any of us." He turned to the gathered wolves. "We've been killing them for generations. Any pup born different, born marked, we buried them, threw them away, because we were too afraid to see what they really were." Horror rippled through the crowd. Kael's light intensified. The runes on his body began to move, shifting and changing like living things. And then he spoke, not in words, not in sounds, in pure knowing. Every wolf there felt it, a pressure in their minds, a voice that bypassed ears and went straight to understanding. You have forgotten. The voice was vast, ancient, not Kael's, or maybe it was, but filtered through something infinitely older. You were meant to be more than survivors, more than predators fighting over scraps. Images flooded their minds, memories that weren't theirs. The first wolves, living in harmony with the mountain, protecting the weak, nurturing the different, growing stronger through diversity, not despite it. You were meant to be guardians. The light pulsed, and I am the reminder. Then Kael collapsed. The light vanished. The runes faded. The presence disappeared. He lay in the snow, breathing but unconscious, looking once again like nothing more than a tiny, blind pup. Alara scooped him up with her good arm, ignoring the pain in her shoulder. Kael, wake up! His chest rose and fell, steady, alive. But he didn't wake. The battlefield remained frozen. Then one of Darius's hunters dropped his weapon. I'm not fighting this, he said. His voice shook. I'm not fighting against that. Coward, Darius spat. But his own blade wavered. Another hunter stepped back, then another. Within moments, half of Darius's forces had laid down their weapons. You're fools, Darius snarled. It's a trick, some kind of... It's the truth, Ronan said quietly. The truth you've been running from your whole life. That strength isn't domination. That power isn't control. He lowered his blade. That we've been wrong. Darius stared at him, at the deserting hunters, at Kael's unconscious form. No, he said. No, this is over, Ronan finished. It's over, Darius. For a moment, Darius looked like he might attack anyway, might throw himself at Ronan in one last desperate bid for victory. Then his shoulders sagged. He dropped his blade. You've destroyed everything, he whispered. No, Ronan said. I've saved it. They returned to Blackthorn Ridge at sunset. What was left of it? The dens were burned, the storage caches destroyed. Everything they'd built over generations reduced to ash and rubble. But the wolves who'd fought on both sides worked together to clear the debris, to salvage what could be saved, to begin rebuilding. Darius sat alone near the burial ground, staring at nothing. Ronan approached slowly. You can still leave, Ronan said. Take whoever wants to follow you. Find a new territory. Darius laughed bitterly. Who would follow me now? The fool who attacked a chosen guardian? You didn't know. Neither did you. But you believed anyway. Darius looked up at his brother. How did you know? I didn't. I just couldn't stand the thought of being wrong, of throwing away something precious because I was too afraid to see its value. Silence stretched between them. I'm not going to beg for forgiveness, Darius said finally. I'm not offering it, but I am offering a place. Ronan held out his hand. If you're willing to change. Darius stared at the offered hand for a long moment. Then he took it. Alara sat in Thorn's den while the healer stitched her shoulder. You'll have a scar, Thorn said. Add it to the collection. Kael lay on a pile of furs beside her, still unconscious, still breathing. How long will he be out? Alara asked. I don't know. What he did... Thorn shook his head. That kind of power has a cost. His body needs time to recover. Will he be okay? I think so, but Alara... Thorn met her eyes. He's not just a pup anymore. You understand that, right? He's something more, something important. I know. And when he wakes up, everything will change. Alara looked down at Kael, at the faint silver line still visible on his fur, at the sealed eyes that had burned with impossible light. Everything already has, she said quietly. Thorn finished the stitching and left her alone. Alara lay down beside Kael, careful not to jostle her injured shoulder. Outside, she could hear the pack working, talking, laughing even, tentative and uncertain, but present. Healing. She closed her eyes, and didn't see the shadow that fell across the entrance, didn't hear the footsteps approaching, didn't sense the danger until it was too late. A hand clamped over her mouth, Another grabbed Kael. Alara tried to scream, to fight, but something sharp pressed against her throat. Quiet, a voice whispered. Unfamiliar, cold. Or you both die right here. Through the entrance, she saw 3 more figures moving in the darkness. Not from their pack, not from Darius's. Strangers. The one holding her leaned close, breath hot against her ear. The council has been watching, waiting, and now that we know what he is, the blade pressed harder. He comes with us. Wyatt? Because he's not the only one with marks. And the others, the ones you've been burying for generations, want to meet their brother. Alara's blood ran cold. Other marked wolves. Alive. Hidden. Watching. And now they were here. The stranger lifted Kael's unconscious form. Tell your alpha this. The old world is ending. The new one is beginning. And he can either join us, the blade drew a thin line of blood across Alara's throat, or burn with the rest. Then they were gone. Slipping out through a back passage Alara didn't even know existed, taking Kael with them. She staggered to her feet, throat burning, and screamed. Her scream tore through the night. Wolves came running from every direction. Ronan first, blade already drawn, eyes wild. He took in the scene instantly, Alara clutching her bleeding throat. The empty furs where Kael had been, the terror on her face. Who? He demanded. I don't know. 4 of them. They took him. They said... Alara's voice cracked. They said there are others, other marked wolves, alive, and they want Kael. Maven burst in behind Ronan, followed by Kira and a dozen warriors. Which direction? Alara pointed toward the back passage. There. But they're fast. They knew exactly where they were going. Ronan was already moving. Maven, take half the warriors and circle east. Kira, west. I'll go straight through. Don't engage if you find them. Track and report. Understood? They scattered. Alara tried to follow, but Thorn caught her arm. You're bleeding. Let me... I don't care. She yanked free. They have Kael. And you'll be useless to him if you bleed out in the snow. Alara wanted to argue, wanted to run after Ronan, but her legs were already shaking, and the cut on her throat was deeper than she'd thought. Thorn guided her to a chair and pressed cloth against the wound. Talk while I work. What exactly did they say? Alara repeated everything. The words, the threat, the mention of other marked wolves. Thorn's face went pale. The council. What council? I thought they were legend. Thorn's hands moved quickly, cleaning the wound, preparing stitches. Stories the old healers used to tell, about wolves who rejected the pack system entirely, who lived in the deepest mountains hiding from everyone. He paused. They say the council was formed by marked wolves who escaped burial, who banded together to survive. You never mentioned this before, because I thought it was a myth, a cautionary tale about what happens when you abandon your pack. His voice dropped. But if they're real, they've been watching us all this time. Why take Kael now? Because he revealed himself, showed his power to dozens of wolves. Thorn pulled the thread tight. They probably see him as one of theirs. A brother stolen by the packs. He's not stolen, he's... Alara stopped. What was Kael? Hers? The packs? Something else entirely? Footsteps echoed outside. Ronan returned, face grim. They're gone. Completely. No tracks, no scent trail, nothing. It's like they vanished. That's impossible, Maven said, coming in behind him. No one moves that clean. The council does, Thorn said quietly. All eyes turned to him. He explained what he'd told Alara. The legend, the marked wolves, the hidden sanctuary. Ronan listened in silence, then slammed his fist against the wall. So they could be anywhere, could have taken him anywhere. Not anywhere, Darius said from the entrance. Everyone turned. Ronan's brother stood there, looking uncomfortable under the hostile stares. I might know where they went, Darius continued. Why should we trust you? Kira demanded. Because I want to help. Darius stepped inside. What I did was wrong, all of it, and I can't fix it. But maybe I can help fix this. Ronan studied his brother for a long moment. Talk. 3 winters ago, when I was scouting the northern territories, I found something. A valley. Hidden deep in the mountains, accessible only through a series of caves. Darius pulled out a scrap of hide and began sketching. I didn't go in because it felt wrong, like I was being watched, but I saw signs. Old dens, fire pits, evidence of wolves living there. Why didn't you report it? Maven asked. Because I thought it was abandoned, and I was more interested in finding new hunting grounds than investigating old ruins. Darius finished the sketch. But if the council is real, if they've been hiding all this time, that valley would be perfect. Ronan grabbed the sketch, studied it. How long to get there? 2 days? Maybe 3 in this weather. We leave at first light. You can't take the whole pack, Maven said. We're still rebuilding, still vulnerable. I know. Ronan looked around. I'll take a small team, fast, light, minimal supplies. I'm coming, Alara said immediately. You can barely stand. They took my pup. I'm coming. Ronan opened his mouth to argue, saw the look on her face, and closed it again. Fine. But you do exactly what I say. Understood? Alara nodded. I'll go too, Darius offered. Several wolves growled. Kira's hand moved to her blade. He's the only one who knows the way, Ronan said. We need him. We don't need a traitor. He's my brother. And right now, he's our best chance. Ronan's voice hardened. Anyone who has a problem with that can stay behind. Silence. Good. Darius, Alara, Kira, Maven, you're with me. The rest of you hold the ridge. If we're not back in a week, he trailed off. We'll be back, Maven said firmly. They left before dawn. 5 wolves moving fast through frozen darkness. Alara's shoulder throbbed with every step, but she pushed through the pain. Kael was out there, scared, alone. Or worse, surrounded by strangers who saw him as a symbol instead of a child. The terrain grew treacherous as they climbed, narrow paths carved into cliff faces, ice-slicked slopes, crevasses hidden under fresh snow. Darius led them through it all with grim efficiency. Whatever else he was, he knew these mountains. They didn't speak except when necessary. Ronan called breaks every few hours, forcing everyone to eat and drink despite the urgency gnawing at them. We're no good to him if we collapse halfway there, he said when Alara tried to skip rest. She forced down dried meat that tasted like ash and melted snow that burned her throat. On the second day, they reached the cave system Darius had mentioned. This is it, he said, pointing at a narrow opening in the rock face. The valley is on the other side. But the caves, they're a maze. Easy to get lost. You've been through before? Ronan asked. Only part way. I turned back when I started hearing things. What kind of things? Voices, whispers, maybe just wind echoing through the tunnels. Maybe not. Kira drew her blade. Well, that's not ominous at all. They entered single file. The darkness swallowed them immediately. Ronan lit a torch, casting flickering shadows across wet stone walls. The tunnel twisted and split. Darius chose paths based on memory and instinct. Sometimes he'd pause at an intersection, head tilted, listening. What are you hearing? Maven whispered. Nothing. That's what worries me. They pressed deeper. The air grew warmer, geothermal heat seeping through the rock. Water dripped somewhere distant, creating an eerie rhythm. Then Alara heard it. Singing. Faint. Haunting. Words she didn't recognize in a language that felt ancient. You hear that? She whispered. The others nodded. They followed the sound through twisting passages until the tunnel opened into a vast cavern, and stopped. The cavern was enormous, easily twice the size of the main den back at the ridge. But it wasn't empty. Dozens of wolves lived here, maybe 100. Dens carved into the walls, fire pits burning bright, children playing in the open spaces, and every single one of them bore marks. Silver runes traced across their bodies, some faint, some blazing. Every wolf different, every pattern unique. They looked up as the intruders entered. The singing stopped. An old wolf stepped forward. Female, scarred, with marks that covered her entire face like a mask. Her eyes were solid white, not blind like Kael's sealed lids, but filled with swirling light. You came, she said. Her voice echoed strangely like multiple people speaking in unison. We knew you would. Ronan stepped forward. Where is he? Where's Kael? Safe. Resting. The transformation took much from him. The old wolf tilted her head. I am Vera, elder of the council, and you are the alpha who let a marked pup live. I'm the alpha who wants him back. He's not yours to take. Ronan's hand moved to his blade. Every wolf in the cavern tensed. Careful, Vera said softly. You're outnumbered 50-1, and our marked wolves are trained. Yours are barely surviving. Then why talk? Ronan asked. Why not just kill us? Because we're curious. Vera moved closer, circling them slowly. For generations, the packs have buried our kind, thrown away gifts you couldn't understand. And suddenly, one alpha decides to break that pattern. Why? Because it was wrong. Wrong. Vera tasted the word. Interesting. Most of your kind don't care about right and wrong. Only survival. Maybe we're learning. Vera stopped in front of Alara, studied her with those swirling white eyes. And you, the low-ranked outcast who defied an entire pack to save one pup. What drives someone to such foolishness? Alara met her gaze steadily. Love. The word hung in the air. Vera's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Love. Yes. That's what your packs forgot. That strength without love is just violence. That survival without compassion is just slow death. Then you understand why we're here, Alara said. I do, but understanding doesn't change the situation. Vera turned back to Ronan. Kael belongs with his own kind. With wolves who won't see him as damaged, who won't spend every day wondering if he's worth the resources he consumes. He's not just his marks, Alara said fiercely. He's a child, my child, and he needs, what? A pack that barely accepts him? An alpha who protects him out of guilt? Vera's voice hardened. We can give him something better. A family that understands him, that celebrates what he is instead of tolerating it. You can't just take him. We already did. Ronan's blade cleared its sheath. Last chance. Give him back. Warriors emerged from the shadows, 30, 40, all marked, all armed. Vera raised a hand. Violence will only get you killed. Is that what you want? To die here while your pack waits for a leader who will never return? If that's what it takes. Vera studied him, then slowly she smiled. You mean that? You'd actually die for a pup you barely know, for a wolf who'll never hunt, never fight the way you value fighting. She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Your packs are changing, finally, after all this time. Does that mean you'll return him? Maven asked. No, it means we'll give you a choice. Vera gestured, and two wolves brought Kael forward. Alara's heart lurched. The pup was awake, looking small and frightened in the grip of strangers. His sealed eyes turned toward her voice. Alara? His voice was tiny, scared. I'm here, she called back. I'm right here. Vera positioned herself beside Kael. The choice is simple. He stays with us, learns to master his power, lives among wolves who understand him, grows into what he was meant to be. Or, she paused, he returns with you, to a pack still learning, still struggling, still carrying the weight of old prejudices. That's not a choice, Ronan said. That's coercion. No. A choice would be letting him decide. Vera looked down at Kael. What do you want, little one? Stay here with your marked brothers and sisters, or return to the pack that buried you alive? Kael trembled. His sealed eyes swept across the cavern, the marked wolves, the strange den, the unfamiliar faces, then back to Alara. I want to go home, he whispered. Vera's expression tightened. You don't understand what you're giving up. I want Alara. I want home. Silence fell across the cavern. Vera stared down at the pup, at his small, determined face, at the way he leaned toward Alara despite the hands holding him. So be it, she said quietly. She released him. Kael stumbled forward and Alara scooped him up, holding him so tight he squeaked. I've got you, she whispered. I've got you. You're safe. But Vera wasn't finished. You can take him, she said to Ronan. But know this, we're watching. If your pack falls back into old ways, if you start burying marked pups again, if you choose survival over compassion, her eyes blazed, we'll come for all of them, every marked wolf in every pack, and we won't ask permission." "Understood," Ronan said. "And one more thing." Vera moved closer. "The marks are spreading. More pups are being born with them every season. Your world is changing whether you're ready or not. The question is, will you change with it? Or will you cling to old laws until they crush you?" She stepped back. "Go, before I change my mind." They didn't need to be told twice. The journey back was faster. Desperation and relief drove them harder than urgency alone. Kael clung to Alara the entire way, pressed against her chest despite her injured shoulder. He didn't speak much, just made small, frightened sounds and burrowed deeper whenever she tried to set him down. "He's traumatized," Thorne said when they finally reached the ridge 3 days later. "Being taken like that, surrounded by strangers, it would terrify any pup." "Will he be okay? Physically? Yes. Emotionally?" Thorne shook his head. "Time will tell." But over the following days, something shifted. Kael began to venture out of the den, cautiously at first, then with growing confidence, and the pack changed around him. Wolves who'd been uncertain, who'd watched with suspicion and fear, started to see him differently. They watched him navigate the dens with impossible precision despite his blindness. Watched him play with other pups, teaching them games that relied on sound and scent instead of sight. Watched him curl up beside Alara at night, content and safe in a way that marked wolves had never been allowed to be. And slowly, grudgingly, they began to accept. Not everyone. Some wolves still muttered about resources and burden and the old ways. But enough. Enough that when Ronan called a gathering 2 weeks after their return, the resistance was muted. "We need new laws," Ronan said, standing before the assembled pack. "The old ones kept us alive, but they also kept us weak, kept us afraid, kept us throwing away anything that didn't fit our narrow definition of strength." He gestured to Kael, who sat beside Alara. "This pup should be dead. According to our law, he deserved to die. But look at him now, learning, growing, contributing in ways we never imagined." Ronan's voice rose. "How many others did we bury? How many gifts did we throw away because we were too afraid to see their value?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "I'm not saying we abandon caution," Ronan continued. "Resources are real. Survival is real. But so is compassion, so is adaptation, so is recognizing that strength comes in forms we haven't learned to measure yet." Darius stepped forward. The pack tensed. He was still barely tolerated. "My brother is right," Darius said. "I spent my life believing the old laws were absolute, that strength was everything, and it almost destroyed us." He looked at Kael. "That pup has more courage in his tiny body than I've shown in my entire life. He faced an entire cavern of strangers and chose to come home. Chose us, even after we tried to kill him." His voice cracked. "If he can forgive us, if he can see value in a pack that failed him, maybe we can learn to do the same." Silence. Then from the back, an old warrior stood. "What are you proposing?" Ronan straightened. "A new law. No pup is judged until they've had a chance to prove themselves. Marked or unmarked, blind, deaf, crippled, doesn't matter. We give them time. We give them resources. We give them a chance. And if they can't contribute," someone called out, "then we adapt our definition of contribution." Ronan's eyes swept the crowd. A wolf who can't hunt might be able to heal. One who can't fight might be able to teach. One who can't see might be able to perceive things the rest of us miss. He paused. "We're stronger together, all of us, not just the ones who fit the mold." More silence. Then Kira stood. "I support this." Maven followed. "As do I." One by one, wolves rose. Not all, but most. Even some who'd followed Darius in the rebellion. Ronan looked at his brother. "You want redemption? Help me enforce this. Make sure every wolf in every territory knows. The old ways are dead. We're building something new." Darius nodded slowly. "I will." Vera's words echoed in Alara's mind. "Your world is changing." She looked down at Kael, who'd fallen asleep in her lap despite the noise and tension. Yes, she thought, it is. And for the first time since she dug him out of that frozen grave, she believed they might actually survive it. Spring came to Blackthorn Ridge. The snow began to melt. Green shoots pushed through frozen earth, The pack's food stores, stretched thin through the hardest winter anyone could remember, finally stabilized. New dens rose where the old ones had burned, stronger, better designed, built with input from wolves who'd never been asked their opinions before. And in the center of it all, a small grave remained, the one where Kael had been buried. Ronan had ordered it left open. Filled with wildflowers someone planted. Alara never found out who. A reminder. She stood there one morning, Kael beside her. He was bigger now, almost adolescent, his coat thick and healthy. His sealed eyes no longer seemed like a disability, just a different way of seeing. "What is this place?" he asked. Alara had never told him, never explained where he'd come from, what they'd tried to do. But he was old enough now. "This is where you were born," she said quietly, "and where you died, and where you came back." Kael tilted his head, processing. "They buried me here. Yes. Because I was blind. Because they were afraid." "Are they still afraid?" Alara looked back at the ridge, at wolves working together, laughing together, living together in ways that would have been impossible a year ago. "Some of them," she admitted. "Fear doesn't disappear overnight. But they're learning, we all are." Kael was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm glad you dug me up." Alara's throat tightened. "Me too. Even though it was hard, even though everyone hated you, especially because of that." She knelt beside him. "The things worth saving are usually the hardest to save. And you were worth it. Every moment, every choice, every consequence." Kael leaned against her. "I love you." The words were simple, uncomplicated, but they shattered something in Alara's chest and rebuilt it stronger. "I love you too," she whispered. Ronan's voice called from the den. "Alara! Council meeting!" She stood. "Come on, let's go see what new chaos we're dealing with today." Kael bounded ahead, navigating the rocky path with ease. Alara followed, slower but steady. The ridge was changing. The packs were changing. And for the first time in generations, that change felt like hope instead of threat. Behind them, wildflowers swayed in the spring breeze, growing in the place where death had tried to take root. But life, stubborn, impossible, beautiful life, had won instead. But life, stubborn, impossible, beautiful life, had won instead. The council chamber was packed, not just with the Ridge Pack, but with representatives from 3 neighboring territories. Word had spread about the blind pup who'd survived burial, about the Alpha who'd changed the law, about marked wolves living openly instead of dying in secret. Some had come out of curiosity, others out of suspicion, a few, very few, out of hope. Alara slipped into the back with Kael. She preferred the shadows during these meetings. Let Ronan handle the politics. She was better at the quiet work of change. But today, Ronan saw her enter and gestured her forward. "No," she mouthed. He gestured again, firmly. Alara sighed and made her way to the front, Kael following close. Every eye in the room tracked them. Some curious, some hostile, none neutral. A scarred wolf from the Ironstone Pack stood, lip curled. "That's him? The abomination everyone's talking about?" "His name is Kael," Ronan said coldly, "and you'll use it. I'll call him what he is, a drain on resources, a weakness you're celebrating like strength. Careful, Torin. You're a guest here." "Am I? Because it seems like you invited us just to preach." Torin looked around at the other visiting wolves. "Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me this isn't about convincing us to adopt your progressive philosophy." "It's about survival," Ronan said. "Real survival. Not just clinging to existence, but actually thriving. By wasting food on cripples?" Kael flinched. Alara's hand dropped to his shoulder. "He's not—" she started. "Let me," Kael said quietly. Alara looked down at him. He was trembling, but his jaw was set, determined. "Let me talk to them." "Kael, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do." He stepped forward before she could stop him. The room went silent. A half-grown pup walking directly toward a circle of territorial alphas and their enforcers. Torin laughed. "What's this? The pet wants to speak?" "I'm not a pet." Kael's voice was small but steady. "And I'm not a drain. I track better than any wolf in my pack. I can hear a heartbeat from 50 feet away. I navigate caves in complete darkness. You're blind, Torin cut in. Those are tricks, compensation, not strength. Why can't they be both? The question hung in the air. Torin opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. Because strength is hunting, fighting, protecting territory. Why? What? Why is that strength? Kael tilted his head. Who decided? And who says it can't mean other things too? Torin's face darkened. Listen, pup. No, you listen. Kael's voice rose, surprising everyone, including himself. You think I'm weak because I can't see, but I hear everything, every whisper, every heartbeat, every lie. His sealed eyes swept the room. And right now, your heart is racing. You're scared, not of me, of what I represent. I'm not. You're terrified that if wolves like me are valuable, then maybe your definition of strength is incomplete. Maybe you've been measuring wrong your whole life. Silence crashed through the chamber. Torin stared at the pup, then at Ronan, then back at Kael. He struggled for words. That's not. An older female from the Blackwater delegation stood. Her name was Senna, and she'd lost half her pack to starvation 2 winters ago. The pup makes a point, she said quietly. We've been so focused on one type of strength that we've ignored others. My best scout has a withered front leg. Can't fight worth a damn. But she finds prey no one else can because she learned to use her nose instead of her speed. Senna looked at Kael. Maybe we've been doing this wrong. Thank you, Kael said. Don't thank me yet. I'm not convinced. But I'm listening. It wasn't much, but it was something. Ronan seized the moment. That's all I'm asking. Listen, watch, see what's possible when we expand our definitions instead of narrowing them. The meeting continued for hours. Arguments, debates, accusations, and defenses. Some wolves left in disgust, others stayed, uncertain but curious. By the time it ended, nothing was decided. No formal alliances, no sweeping changes, but seeds had been planted. That night, Alara found Kael sitting alone near the wildflower grave. You were brave today, she said, settling beside him. I was scared. Brave isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing it anyway. Kael was quiet for a moment. Then, do you think it worked, what I said? I think you made them think. That's more than most wolves accomplish in a lifetime. Torin still hates me. Torin hates change. You just happen to be the face of it. Kael leaned against her. I don't want to be a symbol. I just want to be me. Alara's chest tightened. I know, but sometimes we don't get to choose what we represent. We only get to choose how we handle it. That's not fair. No, it's not. They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge overhead. The ridge was quiet tonight, peaceful, like the world was holding its breath. Ronan found them there an hour later. We have a problem, he said. Of course they did. The problem arrived the next morning. Vera, the elder from the Council of Marked Wolves. She walked into the ridge flanked by 20 warriors, all bearing runes that glowed faintly in the dawn light. The pack scrambled to defensive positions. Ronan met them at the den entrance, blade drawn but lowered. We're not here to fight, Vera said. Then why are you here? To make an offer. Vera's white eyes found Kael, who stood half-hidden behind Alara. The council has been watching, listening to reports from wolves who attended your gathering, and we're impressed. Impressed enough to threaten us again? Ronan asked. Impressed enough to propose an alliance? Silence. Maven stepped forward. What kind of alliance? The marked wolves have knowledge, techniques for managing our gifts, understanding our power. Your pack has something we lack, integration, the ability to live openly among unmarked wolves. Vera gestured at the ridge. Separately, we're both vulnerable. Together, we could be unstoppable. Or you could use us to spread your influence, Darius said from the side. Train our marked pups in your ways. Slowly convert the packs to your philosophy. Vera smiled. You're not wrong, but is that necessarily bad if our philosophy is compassion and adaptation? It's manipulation. It's survival. Vera's expression hardened. The old packs are dying. You know this. Every winter, more wolves starve. more territories collapse. More packs fracture under the weight of laws that no longer serve them. She looked at Ronan. You started something here, something that could save everyone. But you can't do it alone. What exactly are you proposing? Ronan asked. A partnership. We send teachers, wolves who can help marked pups and their families understand and manage their gifts. In return, you allow us to establish a permanent presence here, a bridge between the council and the packs. You want to live here. We want to stop hiding. Ronan looked at his pack, at the wolves who'd followed him through rebellion and change and uncertainty, at Alara and Kael, at Darius, who'd become an unexpected ally. The pack decides, he said finally. We vote. Vera inclined her head. Fair enough. What? The debate raged for 2 days. Some wolves saw opportunity, a chance to learn, to grow, to become something more than they'd been. Others saw threat. Outsiders, change, loss of control. Kael listened to it all from his corner of the den, processing arguments with that uncanny perception of his. On the second night, he approached Ronan. What do you think I should do? The Alpha asked. You're asking me? You're probably the wisest wolf here. Kael made a sound that might have been a laugh. I'm barely a year old. And you've lived more than most wolves twice your age. Ronan crouched down. So, what do you think? Kael was quiet for a long moment. Then, I think fear makes wolves small, and we've been small for too long. That's not an answer. Yes, it is. Kael's sealed eyes met Ronan's. Every wolf who voted against this, every argument I've heard comes from fear. Fear of outsiders, fear of change, fear of being different. He paused. But I'm different, and I'm still here, still alive, still valuable, because one wolf chose courage over fear. He meant Alara. Ronan nodded slowly. You think we should accept the alliance? I think we should stop being afraid of becoming better. The next morning, Ronan called the final vote. It passed. Barely. But it passed. Vera and her wolves moved into the ridge that afternoon. The changes came slowly at first, then faster. Marked pups who'd been hidden by their families came into the open. 3 in the ridge pack alone. 7 in the surrounding territories. The council's teachers worked with them, showed them techniques for managing power, for channeling the energy that sometimes overwhelmed young marked wolves. Kael participated in the training despite already having better control than most. He made friends among the other marked pups, found community with wolves who understood what it meant to be different. But he always came back to Alara. She'd become something unexpected in the months following the alliance. Not just Kael's guardian, not just a low-ranked outcast. A teacher herself. Wolves came to her, parents of marked pups mostly, asking for advice. How do you help a child who's different? How do you protect them without smothering them? How do you teach a pack to see value instead of burden? She didn't have all the answers, but she had experience and empathy, and a stubborn refusal to accept that different meant lesser. Ronan noticed, started bringing her into council meetings, asking her opinion on policies, on disputes, on the 1,000 small decisions that shaped pack life. You don't have to do this, she told him after one particularly long session. I'm fine staying in the background. I'm not doing it for you, Ronan said. I'm doing it because the pack needs your perspective, and frankly, you're better at this than half my senior advisors. That's not saying much. He laughed. It was good to hear him laugh. The weight of leadership had carved lines into his face that hadn't been there a year ago. But there was lightness, too. Hope. Alara, he said after a moment, what you did, saving Kael, it changed everything. You know that, right? I just did what felt right. That's what I mean. You trusted your instinct over law, over tradition, over every voice telling you to stop. He met her eyes. That's not common. That's rare. And it's valuable. Alara felt heat rise to her face. I didn't do it to be valuable. I did it because I couldn't watch him die. I know. That's what makes it matter. 6 months after the alliance, Vera called a gathering. Not just the Ridge Pack, not just the neighboring territories. Every pack within a week's travel, alphas and elders from dozens of groups, some marked, most unmarked, all curious about the rumors they'd heard. They gathered in a valley south of the ridge, neutral ground, spacious enough to hold hundreds of wolves. Alara stood with Kael near the back, watching the crowd assemble. So many wolves, so many opinions, so many potential conflicts. "Are you nervous?" Kael asked. "Terrified." "Me too." But when Vera called both of them forward, they walked to the center together. The crowd quieted. Hundreds of eyes focused on the low-ranked wolf and the blind pup who'd somehow changed the world. Vera spoke first. "For generations, we've measured strength by teeth and claws and hunting prowess. We've thrown away anything that didn't fit our narrow definition, and we've been dying because of it." She gestured at Kael. "This pup should be dead. According to every pack law, he had no right to live, but one wolf, one low-ranked, dismissed, worthless wolf, decided to save him anyway." She turned to Alara. "Tell them why." Alara's mouth went dry. She'd never spoken in front of more than a dozen wolves. Now there were hundreds. She stopped, started again. "I saw him breathe, just once, one tiny breath in the dirt, and I couldn't—" Her voice cracked. "I couldn't let that breath be wasted." "Even though it violated pack law?" Someone called from the crowd. "Especially because of that. Because a law that throws away breathing lives is a law that's already dead." Murmurs rippled through the gathered wolves. Torin pushed forward, still hostile, still resistant. "Pretty words, but words don't fill bellies. That pup has consumed resources for a year now. What has he contributed?" Kael stepped forward before Alara could respond. "I've tracked 12 hunts," he said clearly. "Found prey in storms when visibility was 0. Located lost pups in cave systems. Taught 6 other marked wolves how to navigate without sight." He paused. "And I've shown a pack that different doesn't mean useless. That there are more ways to be strong than the ones you've always counted." "A blind wolf lecturing me about strength," Torin scoffed. "That's true," Senna cut in. The Blackwater Alpha stepped forward. "Everything he said is true. I've watched him work. I've seen what he can do." She looked at Torin. "And I've watched you measure strength the same way for 30 years while your pack shrinks. Maybe it's time to try something new." Torin's face darkened. "You're siding with them?" "I'm siding with survival. Real survival, not just clinging to the old ways because they're familiar." More voices joined in. Arguments for and against, pack against pack, old way against new. And then Darius spoke. "I tried to kill them," he said into the chaos. Everyone turned. He stood alone, looking small despite his size. "I led a rebellion, gathered allies, attacked my own brother because I couldn't accept change, because I was terrified that everything I believed about strength was wrong." He walked toward Kael and Alara. "I was wrong. About all of it. About what makes a pack strong. About what makes a wolf valuable. About what survival really means." He knelt in front of Kael. "This pup, this blind, worthless pup, has more courage than I've ever had. He faced an army and chose love. He faced a council of strangers and chose home. He faces judgment every single day and chooses to keep existing anyway." Darius's voice broke. "If he can forgive me, if he can see value in a wolf who tried to destroy him, maybe we can all learn to see value in each other." Silence fell across the valley. Kael reached out and touched Darius's face. "I forgave you a long time ago." "Why?" "Because holding on to hate takes energy, and I'd rather use that energy to live." Something shifted in that moment. Alara felt it, like a door opening, like a held breath finally released. Wolves began to move forward. Not all of them, but enough. They came to see Kael, to touch his marks, to ask questions, to hear his story. And one by one, they made choices. An alpha from the Eastern Territories announced her pack would adopt the new laws. A coalition from the South pledged to stop burying marked pups. 3 packs revealed they'd been hiding marked wolves for years. Asked the Council for Teachers, it wasn't universal. Some wolves left in disgust, some remained hostile. But the tide was turning, and for the first time in generations, the packs were choosing growth over fear. That night, as the gathering dispersed and wolves returned to their territories, Alara sat with Kael near a fire. "Did we do it?" Kael asked quietly. "Did we change things?" "Some things, not everything," But enough. Is enough good enough? Elara pulled him close. It's a start. And starts are how everything begins. Ronan joined them, settling on the other side of the fire. He looked exhausted, but satisfied. Vera says the council wants to establish 3 more teaching posts, he said. 1 in the eastern territories, 1 south, 1 west. That's good. It's a beginning. He poked at the fire. We're not going to change the world overnight. There will be resistance, setbacks, wolves who refuse to adapt. I know. But what we started here, he looked at Kael. It's going to spread, slowly, messily, but it's going to spread. Kael yawned, leaning heavier against Elara. She stroked his head, feeling the silver marks beneath his fur. They didn't glow anymore unless he used his power. Most days he looked like any other wolf, which was exactly the point. I'm proud of you, she whispered. For what? For being you, for not letting anyone make you small, for choosing to live loudly instead of quietly disappearing. Kael was silent for a moment, then, You taught me that. No, you already knew it. I just gave you permission. But spring turned to summer, summer to fall. The ridge rebuilt, stronger than before, better designed, more inclusive. New dens rose to accommodate the council wolves who'd made the ridge their home. Training grounds appeared where marked pups practiced controlling their gifts. Gardens were planted, an innovation from the southern packs that tripled their food production. Change rippled outward from Blackthorn Ridge like stones dropped in still water. Some packs embraced it eagerly, others slowly. A few violently opposed it and splintered apart, with the younger wolves fleeing to territories that welcomed them. And through it all, Elara watched. No longer an outcast, no longer invisible. Ronan had officially made her his second, not for her fighting skills or her hunting prowess, but for her judgment, her compassion, her ability to see value where others saw only cost. She'd argued against the appointment, said she wasn't qualified. Neither was I when I became Alpha, Ronan had said. We grow into the roles we're given, and you're already better at this than you think. So she served, made decisions, mediated disputes, helped shape a pack that was learning to measure strength in new ways. And at night, she'd return to her den where Kael waited. He was nearly full-grown now, larger than she was, stronger, but still her pup in the ways that mattered. Maven says I'm ready to join hunts, he said one evening. Elara's chest tightened. Are you? I think so. I've been training, and my tracking is better than most of the hunters. It is. So why do you look worried? Because hunting was dangerous, because she'd spent so long protecting him that the thought of him in real danger made her want to lock him in the den forever. But that wasn't fair, wasn't right. I'm not worried, she lied. I'm adjusting. Kael bumped his head against her shoulder. I'll be careful. You'd better be. He went on his first hunt 3 days later. Elara paced the entire time, driving Ronan to distraction. He'll be fine, the Alpha said. You don't know that. No, but I know he's trained. I know he's capable. And I know that keeping him safe forever isn't the same as letting him live. Elara knew he was right. Hated it. But knew it. When Kael returned that evening, exhausted, bleeding from a minor scrape, triumphant, she didn't lecture, didn't hover. She just pulled him close and whispered, I'm proud of you. We got a deer, he said excitedly. I tracked it through a canyon. Maven said my work was perfect. Of course it was. She cleaned his scrape while he talked about the hunt, about the terrain, about the other hunters, about how it felt to contribute in such a tangible way. And she realized something. He didn't need her protection anymore. He needed her support, her belief, her presence, but not her protection. The thought should have made her sad. Instead, it filled her with a fierce, aching pride. East. 2 years after the alliance, the packs held their first interterritory gathering, not for politics, not for alliances, for celebration. Hundreds of wolves gathered in the valley south of the ridge, sharing food, stories, knowledge, celebrating survival, growth, change. Elara walked through the crowd with Kael, marveling at how much had shifted. Marked wolves living openly, pups with disabilities being trained instead of buried, packs sharing resources instead of hoarding them. It wasn't perfect, There were still disputes, still prejudice, still wolves who clung to old ways. But it was better. So much better. Near the center of the gathering, Veira stood with Ronan and several other alphas. They were discussing something, probably politics, probably important, but Alara didn't join them. Instead, she made her way to the edge of the celebration, to a quiet hilltop overlooking the valley. The wildflower grave was there, transplanted carefully, tended by volunteers from a dozen different packs. A memorial. Not just for Kael, for all the marked pups who'd been buried, all the different wolves who'd been thrown away, a promise that it would never happen again. Alara sat beside the flowers. Kael settled next to her. "Do you ever think about it?" he asked quietly. "That night, the grave. Every day. Does it still hurt?" "Yes, but not the way it used to." She touched one of the flowers. "Now it reminds me that the worst moments can become the most important ones, if we're brave enough to fight through them." Below, the celebration continued, wolves laughing, playing, living. "We did this," Kael said softly. "You and me. We started it. But look at them." Alara gestured at the valley. "They made it real. Every wolf who chose compassion over fear. Every pack that changed their laws. Every parent who fought for their different pup." She smiled. "We planted the seed, but they grew the garden." Kael leaned against her, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the new world unfold below. A world where strength meant more than teeth and claws, where survival included compassion, where a blind pup could not only live, but thrive. Behind them, wildflowers swayed in the evening breeze, growing from the grave that had tried to be an ending, but became a beginning instead. Years later, when wolves told the story of how the packs changed, they'd argue about the details, about who did what, about timelines and motivations and significance. But they'd all agree on one thing. It started with a choice. One low-ranked wolf, one buried pup, one refusal to accept that survival meant abandoning compassion. And from that single choice, a new world grew. Not perfect, not easy, not without cost, but alive. Beautifully, stubbornly, impossibly alive. Just like the blind pup who should have died in frozen earth, but chose to live instead, and in living taught an entire world what strength really meant.